Hey, business builders, I'm excited for you to check this out. I had a long conversation. It ended up being 90 minutes, so just be aware, with a gentleman who has two 9-figure companies and 3 8-figure brands. I've known this man for almost 8 years, and we debated the merits of Amazon FBA and direct to consumer. So to be very clear, we talked about the private label as an assumption. This is not FBA or Amazon FBA wholesaling, retail, drop shipping, arbitrage, or any of those models. This is a pure e-com model for building the business with the end in mind, for opening the Amazon FBA channel and the direct-to-consumer and taking it out to 24, 36 months, et cetera, and or longer with an exit planned in mind. We debated on some very critical topics that I think might be of interest to you in this podcast that was done live yesterday, and this is the recorded now, and I hope you guys will enjoy this, so take a listen to this conversation with myself and Matt Harward on Amazon FBA and direct-to-consumer. Welcome to the High Voltage Business Builders, a show where we interview people committed to making their next million through passive income using real estate, brokering, e-commerce, and beyond. If you're a passionate business builder yourself, visit voltageb2b.com to get in touch now.
All right. Hey, everybody. Unicorns, future unicorns. I'm really excited to do this today and to kneecap Neil Twa talking about Amazon and DTC here. Just a little bit of background as to how this came about. I was talking to Neil the other day, and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to Neil in a bit, but I was talking to him the other day, and we got going on Amazon, and he's kind of like the expert on Amazon and DTC, and we're going back and forth. And at one point, Neil kind of just offhandedly says, "Man, we should be recording this. This is really good." And it's like, okay, hang on. Put a pin in what we're talking about then, and let's just do this as a live. So this is unstructured. I do not have there's no real agenda here. There's other than we want to open up this conversation about this because there's good news, bad news type of stuff here. Absolutely. And so before we get going, I did promise Neil one thing on this. So we'll start this off, and then I'll bring Neil on. But I got to start it off with we're going to let Bruce Buffer announce this, and then we'll get going on this little rumble here.
And now, for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
All right, we're good to go. I just want to give a little bit of background here, Neil, and I don't want to spend too much time on the intros. I'm assuming, I guess you got some people here, I got some people here. I'll give you a real quick background on me. So I've got a lot of experience, both on the Amazon side and on the direct-to-consumer side. 2 different 9-figure companies, 6 different multi-8-figure brands that I've created or built that are under my belt. Sold companies to Fortune 500 companies 2 times, last 2 years, 2020 and 2021. Harward Media has been on the Inc. 500 list of the 500 fastest growing companies in America. And that might sound like an agency brand. It's not. We just have house brands. It's all e-commerce is what we did there. I'm no longer with Harward Media. And about, Neil, how long ago was it that I first met you?
I was thinking about this earlier. It was the fall of 2014.
Fall of 2014. Okay, so gosh, about almost 8 years ago. So my relationship with Neil is my first 2 multi-8-figure e-commerce companies that I built were on the Amazon platform. And prior to that, I tried some things in e-commerce and it didn't go well, including some stuff on Amazon, and it did not go well. Neil was a coach that I hired way back then. I didn't know him. I did things like joining, what was the big ASM, right? I don't remember what it stands for anymore.
That's the one you came to us for.
Amazing Selling Machine or something. Anyway,
right.
I was joining all of those things, trying to figure out this Amazon thing. Neil was the coach that got me over the hump on those things. And we've been friends ever since and have stayed in touch loosely since that kind of led to that call the other week where we've been talking about these things a lot. Because now I've gone on, by the way, and I'll say it like it is, I abandoned the Amazon platform. I got very frustrated with some of the things that I couldn't do on there. And I went all in instead on DTC, direct to consumer, which basically, if you don't know what that means, if that's not a term that you're familiar with, that means I went all in on creating my own brand, but I'm controlling the whole process. So I'm advertising on Facebook and Google and TikTok and places like that. And I'm controlling the traffic. I'm controlling the carts. They generally involve something like ClickFunnels or a Shopify. There's a lot more tools involved there, but I went all in on that. So the last four six-figure actually the last three multi-six-figure, multi-eight-figure, multi-six-figure. Okay, a multi-six-figure was that's a good day for us. The last three multi-eight-figure brands I created were all direct to consumer. Amazon being a component of those, but we never did. If we did nine figures at Harward Media, it was never more than a couple million on Amazon. So Amazon was more just a place that we cleaned up and picked up some lost sales. Now, in that time, though, obviously Neil has moved things forward on the Amazon side. So Neil, and again, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about kind of yourself and your background and why we're talking to you, because I may disconnect you if you can't. I mean, you gotta bring it if you're gonna stay on here.
Well, credentials wise, the only reason you had success on Amazon was for me. Do I need to say anything else?
Jeez,
my heart. I brought the hammer already from the start. No, I mean, we focused on the FBA channel to start off with, e-commerce and lead generation, mobile generation and traffic. I was doing before that. I was making large strides in companies that were getting Series A funding and stuff because of the lead generation strategies for paid traffic that I was working prior to that. And when I realized these brands were doing so well with physical products, it's like, why don't I create my own physical product brand? It was like, that's just the logical next step. I'm doing all this traffic for these companies. Why am I not doing it for myself? And in the process of determining that around 2010, 11, someone said, hey, you should try out Amazon selling. And I was like, not if it's like eBay. No way, dude. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. That's a piece of crap. But then they said, no, there's this thing called FBA. They bought this company called FBA and they incorporated it in, and now they're building this infrastructure and stuff.
FBA that was an acquisition?
It was an acquisition, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a separate division of Amazon, yeah. So they used that to help launch their infrastructure, which they've now put about $15 billion into growing that infrastructure since that time frame. And now they purchased it way before that time frame. It was just getting ramped up, and I was sort of at the early stages of it. And I was starting to learn as well what was happening with it and trying to figure out what was going on. My history with IBM and prior to that at Sprint, in my corporate decades there, when I went out into the world for a little bit before starting my entrepreneurial journey, was to build latent semantic search engines, evolve them into knowledge management platforms and human machine language learning. And got to work with some really super smart double doc people out of Armonk. We learned how to build those systems, adapt them, train the people to them. And when I just, saw Amazon, it immediately realized it was one version of that algorithmic engine that we were working on. And so I immediately realized the indicators, what it was doing. And so I started to play with the drop shipping to start out with, just to see if I could figure out what it was doing. And then by the time you and I connected in 2014, I pretty much figured out what it wanted, when it wanted it, how it wanted to see it, and what the dance it was doing, and just getting into line with it so it would reward me. Just at the data points and the timing of the data points and what product, and even how you did the keyword alignment in the listings, and all of these things that we tested, meticulously. And during that time frame, I allegedly had around 25,000 Amazon accounts under my control. Allegedly,
I forgot about that.
Yes, that was helping me basically qualify the data. Right, I wasn't using them to manipulate the account in terms of any terms of service breaking, because those accounts are still online to this day. It was mostly to determine how the algo was speaking, what they were weighting, everything from the title to the bullets to the ranking, just so I could see how to position my products correctly and within the terms of service, not the fake buying, not the nonsense and all the other crap that Amazon hates. So long story short, we got really good at that. We got really good at it.
In fact, if I could kind of jump off here for a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
That part of the reason that, again, if you followed me for any amount of time, you know that I'm all in on algorithms. But one, because I think like that already, and it's something that I'm good at, and I believe it's the future of marketing. Part of the compatibility here is this is what Neil does. Neil does on Amazon what I do on Facebook, which is, it's not just, oh, this is a cool fidget spinner to sell. And I know I'm underplaying that a little bit, obviously, but it's let's figure out what the algorithm here is, because if you can understand and master the algorithm side of Amazon, there's a lot of success to be had out there. Again, I know this because I've done it. I've had 2 brands done. Again, one did about 70 million on Amazon, and one did, gosh, I mean, some of this was after I left. Much of this was after I left because I've been gone from that company for several years now. But probably did a total of $300 million on Amazon. Yeah. And so wait, first of all, do you have more to say there? Because if not,
I could add a little bit more if it's relevant. The main component of this, I think, is to understand that Matt and I are both business builders. While I chose to stay focused on the Amazon system, when I got involved in it, it was for the business building aspect of locking into a traffic source. You know, if you're yelling at Amazon because they're a big evil corporation that takes your money, but you're trying to rank search engine optimization on Google, you're a hypocrite. If you're running Facebook traffic, if you're trying to get on TikTok's algo, if you're doing any of this other crap, but somehow you've isolated Amazon as the giant evil corporation, I'm sorry, but you're a hypocrite.
It's the same thing with Facebook. People who want to just complain about Facebook and everything else, and it's
right.
Like,
I mean, man up.
You complain about the wrong thing. So
rise above that for a second. It's just a business tool, like any other hammer is a tool, or any other saw is a tool, or something else you're going to use along the way. That is a tool of opportunity. Using it correctly, dealing with their system. Facebook shuts your account down. It's a big problem. Amazon might shut your account down if you do it the wrong way and the wrong seller type, which is what I'm going to debate that today too, because people don't understand that. But using it as a legitimate means to acquire an audience, to validate a brand, to make a profitable brand validation for mass marketing and consumption is the big difference here. A singular Amazon channel is worth actually a lot of money now, but the acquisition of data, when not done correctly, and by the way, you can do that on Amazon correctly and within the terms of service, so that's a big narrative lie. I'm going to go through all the narrative lie bullet points and shut them down because
you're showing your hand a little too soon here, Neil.
Dude, I'm getting into it. It's the big time.
I might be able to take you out.
The narrative components of this stuff drive me insane, and the only reason I hear that on the YouTube, Media's, Facebook, or others is because they're trying to sell you Amazon automation scams. They're trying to sell you into their marketing funnel. They're trying to tell you the positives of Shopify versus Amazon or whatever. And literally all they're doing is trying to market to you some other angle of a product. And I will just lay it all out on transparency. You can make money on every one of those channels, and you can fail at any one of them too, if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Or more importantly, as I like to say, you don't know what the heck you're selling. So if you're not selling correctly on any of those platforms, you can fail at it. You can fail at a drop shipping product line on Facebook until you blow $100,000 and don't make it profitable. And you can launch all the wrong products in the wrong way on Amazon and scream and yell that they took your money and shut your account down, but you did it wrong from the very beginning. And you know who ultimately was responsible. So I take personal accountability very big because as a business owner, that's the way it's supposed to be.
So let's start. You said a couple of things there, some of which I'm going to clobber you on later. However,
go for it.
Some of which. It's also fair to say there are, Neil, you mentioned we're both business builders, and that's true. Neither one of us is trying to do like a quick hit thing that we got to reinvent 3 months from now. No. Not trying to follow what everybody else is doing. We may end up in that stream sometimes, but not because we're
certainly associated with it because the language is similar in some ways.
But there's a lot of stuff that we agree on here. And so maybe a good place to start, because you hit on a couple things. One, as I mentioned earlier, we both believe in the algorithm. We both believe that the future of much of marketing, when you take out the broad distribution, newspapers, TV, radio, where you can't get the same level of targeting on it, the algorithm is controlling. I say the algorithm as if there's one. It's not one. The concept of an algorithm controls Amazon, controls Google, controls YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. I mean, it's Amazon. If I didn't say eBay, all of these things are driven by Amazon, which just means they're driven by tech. And they're driven by tech, and this is what an important part of it. They're driven by opinionated tech.
Yes,
meaning
that's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, because I used to say biased, but people associate bias now with, bad or wrong or whatever. It's not. It's just opinionated. It's got certain things. These algorithms have things that they like and things that they don't like. They've got things that they will reward, things that they are neutral towards, things that they will punish. Some of the punishments are extreme. Some of the punishments are you're banned. And that gets a lot of impressed, but I think the more dangerous one, and I believe, Neil, you agree with this based on what you just said, the more dangerous ones are the ones where they're not banning you. They're not saying you're violating our rules. Get off. By the way, if you're doing that, it's not a sustainable business anyway. Yep. The dangerous ones are the ones where when you don't understand what's happening and you're getting these penalties, you're getting these, what did you just say?
Well, you become a victim of
the system. Absolutely. You become a victim. I talk a lot about, are we victim or are we creator here right now? And algorithms you can get on that victimhood side of it really fast and really easily. And so we can both agree on that. We both agree that what we're trying to build here are real businesses.
Let's also agree that at that level, number one, while it sounds overly technical, it actually isn't, number one. And number two, to understand the comparison of the algos is in the relationship to the way we think of them. I think of them anyways, and I think you will agree. The algos may be independently unique to the corporate side of their IP, but they are also talking with each other. They are also communicating with each other at certain levels of data points. And I've been able to prove this over the years.
Of course. I mean, look, Amazon needs to know how Facebook's algorithm works and how they work within it. And
top two-tier sources. So Amazon is the largest traffic product service now for traffic. And then there's Google and YouTube. And it's kind of a tie between which ones are which. And those are like the top three engines of search now on the internet. And what might surprise some of you is that when you master Amazon's algorithm, it will talk to Google and Google will talk to YouTube. They actually combine certain aspects of their algo and similarities so that your Amazon listing becomes like the number one listing on Google for your top keyword when you become the top provider on Amazon. And oh, by the way, it's the same top algorithmic line data points that are talking over to YouTube. So when you go over to YouTube, guess what happens? With the same keywords that are ranking on Amazon and Google.
You're killing me, Smalls, right now because I've got nothing on that for my DTC stuff. That is. No. You mentioned that, and that's one.
Yeah. See, people don't understand that. They think Amazon only. But no, you don't understand the power that Google is doing when you have top level 99.9% domain authority traveling from Amazon to Google to YouTube. And
absolutely. One of the things I want to talk about in a little bit is that trust factor, because the trust factor also could be domain. We should come back to that. Let's keep on some stuff. Let's go through some other things that we can both agree on, and then maybe we even start with that. So here's the other thing that, as we talked, we can both agree on. While we may disagree about where to start and where the run is, and maybe we don't, but as we talked, I think we both agree that trying to master both of these simultaneously is generally a bad idea. They are different they're different business models. They're different skills. I think ultimately, here's another thing I think we can agree on. Ultimately, you want to have mastered both of them, because especially if you're looking for an exit in your e-commerce company. If your channel,
I would argue as one caveat to that it's the CEO operator, which you and I both consider ourselves CEO operators. What may master the understanding of each of those channels, but the implementation and execution can be taught to be mastered by somebody else.
And not only can it be, it should be.
It should be, as we're talking top down for agreement. But at the same time, each of those channels has a separate place in the business. I would defer to them as divisions of the same company. As you open a separate division, you need to open that as a separate line item, a separate P&L within the business. So as you would move from Amazon channel, once it's up and running and proven, you'd open a division that is that way and treat it from the CEO level top down, that you're going to get the right people involved in that division and growth. And while I'm going to learn to master that, or in the aspect of being what I call dangerous enough to know what is happening, then that becomes a whole nother division you should open at some point when the time comes. Take profits from one channel and open it to the other, whether you're going from DTC to Amazon or Amazon to DTC. You don't want to half-ass either one of them. Sorry to borrow the language here. Don't half-donkey them across channels, because you'll end up becoming a victim of the system. And that goes back to what we mentioned just a minute ago.
It's hard to be on either of these platforms. It's hard to be mediocre. I think mediocre is like the worst place that you can. And by mediocre, I mean, it's hard to be good enough.
Some success, you mean?
Some success.
Which is mediocre.
Knowing some stuff. Because like there's such a big difference on either one. On Amazon, there's being the last listing on page 1 and the first listing on page 2. That's a really big difference.
Well, it is. And what are the two fundamental things we're talking about at the end of the day? Search engine traffic, it's organic within Amazon. While you have a PPC or paid per click component that you can engage on Amazon, on Facebook, it's completely paid traffic.
Yes.
And
but the same thing, if you can't match the algorithm,
you won't get the organic result.
You can't. One of two things is likely going to happen, and probably both of them. One of them is it's going to be really hard to be profitable selling your item. But the second one is when you do get to profitability, it's going to be really hard to scale your item. The economics, this is one thing that doesn't happen on Amazon. Your unit economics don't change. They get better as you scale on Amazon.
Correct.
As you scale on DTC, your unit economics tend to get worse, which means that you've got to be you've got to be really good in the early stages so that you can scale and grow.
You've got to consider your product base as more of a portfolio than a one-hit wonder. And I think that's a thing we can both agree on as a portfolio of product opportunities. Amazon's is on the organic growth and reduction of costs. As organic traffic gains and brand gains momentum, your costs get lower. It's an inverse relationship.
Correct.
On the other side, as you're mentioning in your expertise, as you get the costs get more. So it becomes more important for people to understand one product, one cost of acquisition, one first click to cost of sale. Is it your business opportunity? I think we can both agree on that. Your business opportunity is the second, third, fourth, fifth plus products that tie into your CLTV. I know it is.
I may agree with that. I may not agree with that. I think there are models. There are models. And by the way, I say that because, I had my largest brand. In fact, my two largest brands ever, now that I think about it, one from Initech, that company I co-founded in 2011, one from Harward Media. They were basically, we're going to make all our money right up front on the first. But that's a different. Let's.
Well, the channel is very different. So let me break it down for me, because this is obviously a good point to debate the differences and where you see opportunities in the short and long term of this. In the short term, obviously, single product or second product to market is going to be everybody's first opportunity, and it's choosing that right product to build in your brand the first time that really gets the gears and the engine moving. But for us, as we get through second and third products, what a lot of people don't understand about the way Amazon works, and I'm giving away maybe too much here saying this, but the brand affinity of your product gained within Amazon will gain not only more traction, more faster reviews, faster rankings, and more sales by having more products in your brand. Most people don't understand that like 75% of all Amazon sellers have 5 or less SKUs within their private label brand. What they don't understand is that the top 10% of all Amazon sales are brands that have more than 5 branded SKUs. Why? Amazon rewards your brand with more traffic, email marketing, paid campaigns, and a whole lot of other branded things they will do for you when they think of you as a serious brand in the system. That's a big opportunity for growth within this model and how you can achieve scalability in 12 months very fast.
Okay, so a couple of other things here. I got a little list of these things here. Both these have, you can scale on both these platforms. You scale differently on whether you're DTC or whether you're on Amazon, but both are scalable. We can both acknowledge that. I think both of these are taught poorly right now.
Yep.
They at least in the world that I'm exposed to, I don't see a lot of people talking about how to create a real business out of this. What I call a CEO scale business. So it's mostly quick hit, just kind of crappy, stupid, tactical. Something that's going to work for, maybe it might work for a year, but it's short term. You're not building real businesses, exitable businesses out of them.
No, and we can agree. Real business is 12, 24, 36 months out for a real business growth, not 30 days, 90 days like most make money crap.
Yeah. There's no, I'm going to hit this button and tomorrow everything is up and I'm scaling tomorrow. That's kind of ridiculous.
No, it takes time. It takes growth. It takes both traffic and optimizations. And on our side, it takes optimization of the brand, obviously launch to market. And of course, in full transparency, there are pros and cons to both of these models, especially because we're talking about physical products. And I know a lot of people may be thinking or not thinking, and we may debate this or not debate this, but really the issue comes down to product right now is a component of an opportunity, as a lot of people may not see it, or they may see it as an issue with these types of business models. Personally, my argument is an opportunity. When you see it from the right side of the fence, when you see it as an asset, I see products as an opportunity. The challenge literally gets down to making sure that you are not like a squirrel, like, oh, there's another opportunity over here, or oh, there's another opportunity over there. You and I have both spent a better part of our careers staying in one lane. Like I call it the swim lanes, right? We have been stayed in one lane. I am one of the beginning, ending, still operating coaches and active sellers in the Amazon space. Yes, people have come up in the last 3 or 4 years, but not many people have the longevity in this market and hedging in it that I have. And because of that, what happens? You see more opportunity, you adapt, you change. When others fall out, you analyze, like any business model. You analyze the opportunities and you change and you shift. And we have. And a lot of the things we've been applying to Amazon have to do with full mainstream e-com metrics. Like you would track average order value. So do we. You track customer lifetime value. That's a big component of what we're doing. You track both customer data and other things, which a lot of people argue is only a direct-to-consumer opportunity. And I will tell you it's not. When done on Amazon the right way, we can also acquire Amazon's customers from there, get their data, obviously doing it within the terms of service and the way we handle the branding and the packaging and the marketing of the products to the consumers. We can also acquire consumer data. So again, narratives be what they are. There's just a lot of smack talk about Amazon and its opportunity. And frankly, if you really look at it from the right angle, it's a big opportunity, and it's not a removable opportunity. Does Amazon close your accounts? Like that's another big one. I know Facebook closes your accounts, right? Or has closed them in the past. Yes.
I've heard rumors that might happen sometimes.
Allegedly, if you jack around with things, Amazon will shut you down. Here's the thing. We've lost one account in 10 years, and it wasn't even ours. It was tagged to a client who we had connected to one of our accounts, and because they got their account shut down, we got that account shut down. When you're a business registered and you actually have a trademark and a brand, you will not be shut down with Amazon. They may temporarily restrict your products for gating or validation or issues, but we have not lost an entire account. And it's because of the way that it's done. If you're doing retail, online, arbitrage, wholesale, automation stuff with Amazon drop shipping products, you're going to get shut down. Like this is happening all the time. They've closed like 500,000 accounts in the last year. They kicked off $15 billion in sales from some major brands who were caught not only buying reviews, but selling and doing fake manipulations. They shut them all off the account. And good for them, because it just creates more opportunity for the rest of us who are operating within the system and operating within the opportunity. I know that's a little bit of a rant, but it literally gets back to the main component, I think, of some of the debatable topics here about which channel makes most sense.
Okay.
For startup people, for brand new people who maybe want to open this revenue stream, who are savvy enough to be in business or considering the options for their intrapreneur to entrepreneur move. I've had the most success with people on Amazon.
So this is something you mentioned the other day on the call, and and I like this concept that you had.
Yep.
So you were talking about that Amazon is almost more like it's not all of Amazon, by the way, but how you think of Amazon, how you treat Amazon,
sure,
is more like a franchisee. In that you're buying into a system. If you work the system, it's a proven system. There's a lot of it that's done for you already, provided you're not trying to swim upstream and you're not trying to break too much out of the box. That actually becomes important on Amazon, to not swim upstream, to not make waves, however you want to look at that, but it's almost more like a franchise opportunity. And it's interesting because as soon as you said that, I'm like, gosh, that rings so true to me, because when I think of franchise opportunities, I very much have a founder mentality. I have the mentality of let's build this thing, let's start from scratch, and let's do something cool. And that means that, like the person who has made the long comment here, I've had probably way more failures than most people had in life, because that's the nature of taking risk. That's the nature of going out and trying to do something hard. And so then of course it always looks easy in hindsight. Cool.
Always.
Whatever. But that founder part of me, when you say, to do Amazon, the way you think about Amazon is more like a franchisee. And I immediately kind of bristle, like, I don't, that's not me. I don't want to be a franchisee. I don't want to go out and just, and buy a Starbucks and just work the Starbucks system, even though, like, the chances of being successful as a Starbucks franchisee, they have to be approaching 100%, right? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea, by the way, what it is, but it's certainly not less than 20%, less than 5%, like you get in some of these other online spaces. So looking at Amazon as a franchisee, on the one hand, that's like good news and bad news, because I throw up in my mouth a little bit thinking about doing that as a business
because you're
model.
also looking at it as a business owner who has to give up equity or even give up profit sharing to the marketability of that brand, right? Which also technically isn't yours.
Yes.
And so you're buying into their brand and stuff. And so the debate here is, franchise versus non-typical franchise. And just to clarify the language of what I meant in that is that, the operations, the system, the plan, the connections, the suppliers, the understanding of how it works and how to reach the people and even where to place the buildings or when to place it is a big component that they've already figured out, like into the billions of dollars. And you're not going to get to that point unless you're a unicorn. So getting forward to that is to leverage it. Like I see it as a leveraging assets, leveraging infrastructure, speed to revenue. How fast can you get your first product sales? How fast can you actually move through those steps? When you've already seen it in a typical franchise model, that's where I like this, because we can then also multi-brand. Like a franchise opens multiple channels, we can open multiple channels, right?
Yes.
We can open them within the same framework without having to go off to a lot of new locations. And for me, in my brain, like the ADHD guy who talks too fast sometimes, this works really well for me. Like I can work really fast and it can change continuously from brand to opportunity to testing constantly. Like I don't have to get out of that lane. It just fits that part of my brain.
So this is maybe one of those things where, from a mentality standpoint, there will definitely be entrepreneurs, people who want to own an e-commerce business. And e-commerce, that's another thing we can both agree on. E-commerce, that's a really good business to be in.
It's
in
the last
people
few
buying
years.
Stuff, even with prices going up and everything. There are other challenges right now that have to be addressed, but like people buying things, that's going to be in style for a while.
I'm pretty sure it's still going to stick around for the next 10, 20 years.
But from a mentality standpoint, I think that there's a mentality that really fits with that franchising. I hope this doesn't, I'm not trying to beat on franchising. It's just that to me, as somebody who wants to figure out stuff, who wants to have the high risk, because I also want the high reward side of it. The franchisee part of it is the things I want to leverage there.
I think you said this a minute ago. You did over 350 million on Amazon, right? So
yeah, probably.
I don't know who on this channel listening to this right now wouldn't raise their hand and say, "How would you like to make $350 million on the Amazon channel?" Like, you can't debate that point, can you?
And it just drove me nuts.
Right. So at the end of that, to be clear, with that opportunity, I see Amazon, and this is very different, I think, than a lot of the people I've listened to in the videos and other connections in the coaching space, which I don't really consider myself a part of that. But the end result is, Amazon is the only channel, and a lot of them are just now catching up with the idea that you should do other things besides Amazon. We've been talking about this for like a long time. I see Amazon as an incubator. Okay. I see it as a place to cradle the baby of your brand, cradle the understanding of your avatar, find out how many people within those 200 million a month are willing and able to buy your products. Okay. And then prove the concept of the language, the brand, the copy, the avatar, and the whole segment of that business that I can just take and replicate into this other division of direct to consumer and let it go out to market with all that knowledge. Like,
now here's why, by the way, so I'm going to disagree with you on this, because I meet so many people who think that that's what they're going to do with their Amazon brand.
Well,
and it's hard. So this is the flip side of it. DTC is hard. Now I like that, because I'm going to take advantage. There are things that I'm going to leverage that, because of their very difficulty of them, they create a barrier to entry there. And I don't personally know, even me for my Amazon brands, when we tried to take our Amazon brand, either one of them, so one was a big essential oils brand, 1,200 SKUs and one of the top brands on essential oil brands on Amazon. The other one was a hoverboard brand that was more of an opportunity chase for sure. It lasted less than a year, but did lot of revenue on it. Trying to take both of those, either of those, DTC. Admittedly, I didn't know really what I was doing, but the point being, it was way harder than I expected it to be. And I meet a lot of Amazon brand owners who think that. They think, well, I'll get it up and going on Amazon, and then I'll just kind of graduate it over. Once I've proved all this stuff, I'll graduate it over to DTC. And they've got the wrong products. And Amazon is because of the ecosystem and its particular algorithm and what it wants to reward, when you try and take that reward system over to DTC, more often than not, it ends not just in failure. It ends in this super frustrating, like
waste of time.
It's money. Wasted time, wasted money.
But where does that end up at? Where's the Achilles heel? Where's that one point? What's the difference between an Amazon company who has products and brands that actually makes a successful DTC?
I would say that the most common thing that I see is going to be the people, and I'm using this just because it was such an overused kind of trope on Amazon early on, but it's the people who get into silicone spatulas and they have these items that first of all, in competing in the Amazon space, most of the people who are competing on that space are trying to compete on price. It's what I always called a race to the bottom. So in our essential oils business, that was part of it. We've got our top seller there was a sub $8 product that we really didn't make a lot of money on, but we could do a ton of volume. And by the way, a ton of volume on Amazon is like thousands a day of this product, but it got people into our brand, as you mentioned. That became more important to have those other SKUs and some other things. But we could not take a sub $8 product and move it DTC because our acquisition costs were just going to eat us alive.
The product. So when you look at the product, the differentiation between, I think, what I do and what we do with this growth model is that you've got to identify another competitive advantage of that product. So many people just focus on the Amazon competitive advantage and they say, I'm going to launch that product on Amazon and I see all its competition and I see its opportunity, but they miss one major segment of the competition in market analysis. And that is, can I sell, or where is that product in the mainstream? Where is that product in the other 70% of e-commerce? Because it's actually like 67% mainstream, 33% Amazon. That's about what the breakdown is. So Amazon is just a big gorilla, but they're not the major market gorilla for e-commerce movement. You've got to do your competitive market analysis on that product and brand into the mainstream too, if you're considering moving from FBA to DTC in the future. Yes. You need to know that product can have a mainstream competition, profitability, and go-to-market opportunity so that when you test launch it on Amazon and it proves, well, you now know it has the metrics and the numbers to achieve a DTC. That's
so let's come back and maybe there's something else we can both agree on here, coming at it from different angles. Because the corollary to this is the number of DTC brands that come out. Like the supplement space is a great example of this.
Oh boy.
They come out, they're going to chase a trend, and they're going to come out with a pricing model that they're going to make a lot of cash. If they figure it out, they'll make a lot of cash fast, but they don't have a sustainable model. And they don't have a model that can move into any other channel, because these are the ones who are going to come out. And I'm dating myself here, but Garcinia Cambogia, and they're selling $90 bottles of this stuff that now on Amazon are what, $7 bottles of these things on Amazon. Yep. So they can't go the other way. Neither one of which is a particularly, I think both of which can give you cash, but it's hard to expand your channels, which ultimately is important to having a good, viable, sustainable business. You've got
a better control on DTC for that brand and brand valuation of that product for a hyper-competitive niche in which you have a little bit more ability to control the saturation component. And when you bring that over to Amazon, especially at that level, you will find in certain niches in Amazon, like electronics, nutraceuticals, and clothing, that you must have a major machine running before you even attempt that, because you're jumping into a highly competitive space that has saturation all over it. And unless you can dominate that space, you're going to get eaten alive. And because it's extremely competitive, there are a lot of unethical things happening within companies in those spaces who do not want you to take over their market share, because as you mentioned, they're moving 1,000 to 5,000 units a day, and they do not want you touching that market share. Therefore, they're willing to go out to some location in India and hire 1,000 people to go put fake reviews on your site. And they have no ethical boundaries with that whatsoever. And that's one of the gotchas I know about Amazon. It's a gotcha that a lot of people fall into. In the areas in which they're selling those products, I call it Amazon's mosh pit. It's I like to sit in the executive suite and watch the show, because we've moved into the position where we know that's the tier 2, tier 3 opportunity for products that are profitable in this brand market and have the profit to go mainstream. But I watch a lot of sellers get involved in this thinking, well, I'm going to move that $8 product at 1,000 units a day and I'm going to make all the money in the world. No, you got the wrong mentality. You're running the numbers the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, and so probably where we both agree on that, again, coming from different angles, is
yep,
you're going to be way ahead of the game if you take that longer view from the get-go. So even if, whether you're starting just on Amazon or whether you're starting on DTC, and whether you're starting on DTC with paid media or whether you're starting on DTC with a Shopify store that's organic, regardless of those things, if you can put some, I say this like it's just a flippant thing to do, but when you can reason about where am I going with this, because the mistake I see people making, I think on all sides of this, is they start with something that they can find immediate success in their, again, whether it's organic Shopify, whether it's paid media, whether it's Amazon, eBay. I mean, there's a lot of variations of this, but they don't ever up front start to look at it as a business. Where am I going with this? Will I have the margin flexibility? Will I have the volume flexibility, the audience flexibility, the messaging flexibility, that if ultimately I needed to have something, Amazon, you're selling in a high trust, a lot of proof and a lot of experimentation is going on behind the scenes that you don't have to do. High trust, but because of that, they're going to try and drive prices down lower because they've got the high trust model.
But here's the caveat, the argument. You can work a model though, okay, where you cast a net of those products, but if you're not doing it the right way, as you said, from the beginning with the end, and just trying to sustain your business model on just those products, you're going to fail. Now, if you take those products and you work it a little different in the brand-driven, brand affinity aspect of that, you're going to have second and third products where, okay, I may be acquiring 1,000 units a day of this product at a $2 profit margin when it's all said and done. But it's what I'm doing in that brand next that matters more. And that's where a lot of people in amateur
that's the part we can both agree on. Coming at it from different angles, but looking towards where am I going with this? Again, if you're not trying to build a real business, I suppose there's a lot of value in this kind of stuff still, but really probably this isn't the conversation for you either, because that's part of the point of this is whatever angle you're coming at it from, whether it's coming from the DTC side or whether it's coming from the Amazon side, you've got, when you can look and say, I need to tell a coherent story from a business standpoint. Where am I going with these products? Is this a product that ultimately will work on Amazon? Is this a product that ultimately will work off of Amazon? You don't know that. There's no guarantees on those things. But when you can, you talk about having a $2 margin and you're just going to make it up and I'm going to sell thousands of these, which one is, again, it's harder than you might think. Although easier on Amazon than off Amazon. But here's what I can already tell you. If you get a $2 margin, I don't care what the product is. You're not going to put paid media to it and have it work. It doesn't work like that anymore. It maybe did several years ago.
So really strong on your funnel building.
To look at that and have that story is important to at least know where are you going. Now that's going to bring me up into something else. And sorry, I'm just kind of, as I look off to the side here, I got some notes here that I wanted to kind of get into, because you hit on a lot of things that we're not going to have close to enough time to get through these things.
This is going good.
But just this concept of Amazon as a walled garden. Upsides and downsides to it. Here's the primary reason why I got off of Amazon, ultimately, was that Amazon is the walled garden, meaning they own the customer. And I know you're going to have a rebuttal to this, but they own the customer. They control the buying process. They control the upsell flow. They control the presentation, the cart, all these other things. So ultimately, I was like, gosh, I really want. It's going to bring. The downside to this is I know I'm going to be bringing a lot of complexity into my ecosystem, and what I'm trying to prove out. I now bring more variables in that I have to prove, and more variables. Every additional variable. Anybody who took, high school math where you have no variables, you're just doing 5 + 3. That's easy. But then you start, then they start adding letters in. It's like, That's a little bit, that's harder, right? But one variable is pretty easy. Two variables gets a little bit tougher. Three variables, four variables, it escalates really, really fast. It's not linear. The difference between solving for 2 and 3 variables is not a linear difference. So if I'm bringing these new variables in and I'm going to take over what's the upsell flow, what's the cart process, what's the ownership process, and ownership in terms of who owns this relationship. Do I own it? Does somebody else own it? Now, Amazon does a great job owning that relationship, by the way. They're going to do a better job. Amazon's going to do a better job owning that relationship than I'm going to do owning that relationship. But I may be able to do 30% as well as Amazon and make more money doing it, if that makes sense. So to me, it's a good fit to pull that complexity into my own space to get the additional upside versus playing in a walled garden. But again, now we're going to go to this kind of mentality or capacity type of thing where I think for a lot of people that walled garden there's a ton of safety and security.
But what's considered a walled garden? Like, let's define that, because you considered Amazon to be a walled garden, but in some ways I consider Facebook to be a walled garden because they also penalize you for taking people off their site. Yes. They make it difficult for you to acquire a customer off of Facebook too. Is that a correct statement?
That they don't make it difficult, but they certainly don't reward it. They want people staying on their site and staying engaged with their site. That's
so there is a bit of cat and mouse game on the DTC side.
Absolutely,
play with 100% to ensure compliance on your webpage and landing. And what thing did they argue with, and why did they quit my ad, or why did they not approve this ad because it says some totally random looking thing that says, well, this website is supporting pornography, and you're like, no, it doesn't say that at all. Yes, I find that to be very frustrating too, because that's a game of trying to figure out.
Okay, so maybe trading one walled garden for another walled garden, but one where I get to control the process. Maybe you know how to pierce that walled garden, in a roundabout way through the back door in the maze that takes you out to the left. Through experience, it's taught you got to go 3 lefts, 2 rights, you got to go up, down, and then you take one more right, and you're there. For me, it's a little bit less. It's
difficult.
Not a video game cheat code.
I'm going to do it like this. At times with Amazon versus DTC or versus Facebook traffic or these kinds of things that I'm thinking of, and you can call DTC a wholesale, a retail. You can direct to consumer is a whole.
There's a lot under that umbrella for sure.
There's a whole bundle of things. But I look at it like in such a way it is. Here's an analogy. Once upon a time, I used to be a diehard Windows guy, bought the computers, had the IBMs, whatever, and just Windows. And I don't know what those Mac people see in that. And it's a bunch of nonsense. And they're a bunch of pansies who don't run really good, machines, and they don't know how to do real business because they're Mac people, right? That was my thinking for a while. I used to be that guy until I bought my first Mac. And then I was like, well, crap, like, why haven't I done this before? And I had like 20 machines that I had to buy and purchase and fix and tweak and Frankenstein in order to keep them running, and then blue screens of death and all this crap. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I've had like 3 Macs in 15 years and didn't run into any trouble. So I sort of see Amazon a little bit like the Mac world, where I see the components of DTC, the formula of the traffic, and manipulating their walled garden to getting into your traffic and funnel and incorporation, a little bit like playing in the technical so far that it feels like Windows operation again. It feels like I'm running a Windows computer that at any time I'm going to get a blue screen of death on, and I don't know what the variables are. I don't know where the boundaries are. I don't know why. It's so frustrating. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, your kernel failed. I'm like, what the hell is a kernel? I don't care what a kernel is. Like, why did this fail? So I feel like now the guy who's come full circle, the aspect of just playing in the Amazon space to a degree is like operating at a Mac. I know that sounds like a really terrible analogy for me, and I'm
that's an analogy, by the way, that I 100% relate to. So it makes sense to me. And so again, I'm gonna reframe this, because I think there's kind of a mentality thing here, yes, at least for me. So the reframe that I see here is, if I'm going to take that control, I agree. I'm just walking a different minefield than you are.
It's a different
playing in a different garden or walled garden. Yep. But here's what I look at. Amazon's going to do so. Jeff Bezos has a quote: "Our success at Amazon is a function of how many experiments we do per year, per month, per day, per week, and per day."
Oh,
and,
wow, yeah.
And here's what when you buy into Amazon, you're buying into that infrastructure, and they're going to experiment on their payment processing, and they're going to experiment on on their product detail pages and how they show different things. And you're going to give up, you're going to lose some control, but it's not like you're losing control to something where it's like, how stupid are they? You're losing control to somebody who's doing things right.
It's a $1 trillion split tested funnel.
Okay.
That's how I analogize it.
So that's great. Now, this is going to come back to me and my mentality, which again, I think hopefully there are people listening to this who relate to me also. Because I hear what you're saying. I feel. It's this concept of if you're going to go off of Amazon, if you're going to go DTC, and you're not willing to take on that complexity, if you're not willing, I don't know that I've met a company who's not doing well, that's testing enough, that's experimenting enough.
Testing is a lot.
It's huge, and they're running 2 experiments a month, and they need to be running literally 200 experiments a month. And so I'm willing to take that on and figure that out. But it's like people who capture email and they introduce friction into their process. And then it's like, well, do you email them? No. Well, do you do this with it? No. No. It's like, why do you even want to own that relationship then? You're not doing you're not leveraging that relationship. So here's my reframe of this.
Okay, go ahead. Keep
going. Is just that. I'm willing to take on a complexity because it's a complexity, one, that suits me. But 2, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge I have to be testing, not at a level. Amazon's testing, they're making 12,000. I think there's more than that. They're up near 20,000 tests a year, I think, that they run.
All the time.
I'm not going to test at that level, but neither do I need to. I'm not trying to be a $1 trillion company right now. But I've got to be testing at a level that if I'm going to take that away from Amazon, if I'm going to absolve myself, if I'm going to get out of that walled garden, I can't be in the walled garden of Facebook, which you're right, has its own minefield for sure. But I can't take on the risk of that and then ignore all of the things that I'm losing by leaving Amazon's walled garden. And this is the mediocre thing, I think. I'm reframing something I said really early on. The biggest mistake you can make is giving up the benefit of either, and while taking on the penalties of either. Does that make sense? So the people who take on, I'm going to take on all the penalties of having to have my own DTC. I have to have my own infrastructure. I've got to have my own upsells and cart flow, and I've got to own that customer relationship, and I've got to leverage that customer relationship, and I've got to experiment, and I've got to do all of this stuff. That if I'm not going to do that, go on Amazon, because they're going to do all of that stuff for you.
Well, but at the same time, I would argue you still have to remember that top down, either direction, it starts with the understanding of the customer. Double the understanding of your customer, and you will double your revenues. And as long as you run the business by the numbers correctly, the profits will follow. So either channel, you can screw up a perfectly optimized ClickFunnels or Shopify account by just not understanding your customer and screwing up all your marketing.
Yep.
On the Amazon side of the house, you can screw up their brilliant $1 trillion funnel by providing a crappy product with a crappy customer experience on your listings and in the perception of your product and your brand to that customer who may trust Amazon first, but then they get the product and they're going to go back and give you a 1-star review, and you're screwed. So when you get down to Amazon, there is one pro and con here. It has to do with that customer top and flowing all the way to the bottom. Is that you can get really screwed on Amazon if you provide a poor customer product brand experience. And that means the product itself.
And I know a lot of people who try and shield themselves from that on DTC. They know they have a crap product, and they know they can't sell it on Amazon because Amazon's going to have some, it's all going to be forward facing on Amazon. Yeah. And so they hide behind that by going DTC with it.
I can get away with selling a really crappy product to a lot of people on DTC.
Yeah.
Without a lot of fear, as long as I'm not screwing with the FTC regulations and stuff, of the blowback of their reviews or product issues that will probably just hit my customer support desk, and I'll deal with it when nobody really knows, and I'll skirt it under the rug. Right. On Amazon, I have to keep a very public, very forward-facing approach to providing a very top quality product and brand that people want to leave reviews for. And so I can weed out the 1 and 2 stars as people who are just like stupid because they, it said, do not stick your tongue to the hot plate. And they stuck their tongue to the hot plate anyways, and then left you a 1-star review about getting a burn and going to the hospital. It's like, no, of course you did. You stuck your you have to, there's those, but then there's the rest of it that does require you to become good at branding, which is a major component of the business.
And I see this as this is upsides and downsides to both of them, because another reason that I left Amazon, there are probably 2 or 3 really core reasons why I left. And when I say left, I just mean I didn't build my businesses around Amazon anymore. I'm still on it. If you're not on Amazon e-commerce, it's kind of stupid because people go there. There's a high trust component. And
people forget that Amazon is the gorilla in the corner waiting to steal their sales. So if you're paying for traffic on any other median and you're moving people on any other format and they go to Amazon and they don't find you, okay, if you haven't taken the effort to ride that horse correctly, they will buy somebody else's product.
You're marketing for somebody else.
And they will do it at 18 to 20% of your
It's the same thing. Like if you're running, obviously I'm big on Facebook, spent a lot of money on Facebook over the years. But if I'm like it's a special kind of stupid to spend a bunch of money on Facebook and not be running at least branded search on Google for the exact same reason that people are going to go, they're going to look at it, they're going to Google your brand, they're going to look at those things, and you at a minimum just clean up those scraps. Amazon's the same thing, at a minimum.
Well, I would argue on the Amazon side, I don't worry about the people buying on Facebook.
That's true, because Facebook's not a search engine.
More often than not, they're not leaving that channel to go buy the thing on Facebook they just saw. They're going to be like, into on Amazon.
You get into the concept of pull versus push, which is, so Amazon's a pull model because it's a search engine, but that limits the scope, and it creates its own restrictions, but also has its own benefits. Versus pushing, I get to interrupt people all day long, which frustrates people more. But at the same time, it also means that when I figure some things out, I've got some other flexibilities. But it's probably
things out. I agree. On the DTC side, then you will understand Amazon's PPC system, especially if you have any experience with Google. Okay. If you have any experience with Google and keyword traffic searches, you're going to crush it with the way you can do it on Amazon PPC when done correctly. And I mean, like, dominating the competition. I don't care if they have 5,000 reviews. I will go to market with 5 reviews, and then I will buy all their customers and own them in 6 to 9 months. And people are like, well, how do you do that?
That was my model for
totally possible.
Essential oils. I mean, I lost $50,000 to start just buying.
But you got to know how you're managing it, or you can just blow your PPC campaigns out of the water if you are not tracking the other metrics in the system. And the numbers, I think we all agree, are a big component of making this work. And that's where a lot of people screw up either channel.
I want to come back, though, too, and finish off, though, this concept of, again, this is the good news and the bad news. You build your business on Amazon. There's that famous picture of the iceberg, that there's the water line, and you've got 10% of the iceberg up above the water, and then all of this this mass of it below the water. When you build on Amazon, you're building above the water. By definition, you're building above the water. Your listings are public. They're in nodes. I mean, they're by definition they're searchable. You want them to be searchable, accessible. Reviews are open and public. All of these things that are all above water, which from a consumer standpoint, this is fantastic. And done right from a business standpoint, it's also fantastic. But the sneaky little downside to that is it's also a competitive. There's a lot of data that can be gleaned.
If you don't know what you're doing, absolutely.
Yes. Whereas
that's true.
On a DTC, I have a lot more control over what do I want above the waterline and what do I want below the waterline, which can be used nefariously. That can be used in unsavory ways, but it can also be used in very competitive ways, protectionist ways where I can control, because DTC is all about that. Literally, that owning that relationship first. You own the relationship, like you mentioned. When you can understand that better, you're going to be more profitable. You own the relationship first, and then you sell stuff to them next. When I can own that relationship in other channels that are, let's call them silent channels, quiet channels, channels that aren't going to pop up above the waterline, but now I can sell into that channel super effectively. That was another big reason why I wanted to control that process. It's again, it's one of those things. If you come off of Amazon and you don't take advantage of that,
and I'm not. That's where the debate ends. Basically, is that you're a control freak and I'm not. So, no. I just keep hearing you say control, and I'm like, I'm okay not having all the control. That's why I bought the Mac. No, I think the simple component is that.
I think that's a fair statement, though. By the way.
Well, it is, because you tend to geek out a little more than I do, which is cool.
And I want to push on those other leverage points that I can.
Yeah, and
Yes.
there's plenty of people that resonate with you, and no offense to that, of course. I think what I got down to was where my successes came in. It wasn't the optimization of the tweaking of the technology anymore, because I had a whole history of that in my past. What I got down to was tweaking the branding and the marketing and getting into the minds of that customer to really speak that right language that said, I'm better than the rest of these products.
Yes.
Like, you can see me, you could see all
Well,
of
and
them.
you go,
you
you
did a research
on Amazon, to do Amazon right, like you go brand first.
Oh, yeah.
I go brand last. The branding is the last thing I do. I'm trying to
very
prove, can I
different.
sell it first? So again, it's this different mentality that what I do makes a lot of sense to me. And
Yep.
I get that Amazon. Here's where I would love to maybe end this at is,
Okay.
I think I would be an idiot, first of all, to come in and say, gosh, if you're selling on Amazon, you're a turd and you're stupid.
Yeah.
Because
Say
that's
it to
just
my
not that's just not true.
Say it to my face.
Yeah. But there are certain things that you can leverage off of Amazon that you can't on. And conversely, if you're trying to make DTC work, but you're not leveraging any of the strengths of DTC, which are hard, they are their own minefield. There are more variables figuring out DTC than there are figuring out Amazon. That's one of the big strengths of Amazon. I think that if I came up with, again, somebody left that comment that I just did the easy stuff and I had a failure, and I hadn't had one failure. I've had hundreds and hundreds of failures, guys. I'm very open about that.
Failures. I have to. We've all been in there.
So, I've nobody's lost me more money than me, and when you go DTC, if you're going to have a way higher level. Let me rephrase this. Even DTC done right, you're going to have a way higher failure rate than Amazon done right. Amazon done right, I think you can almost turn it into that franchise model of, I think you can actually, I may be wrong in this because not the field I play in, but it feels to me, and maybe this is naively, that you could have, you could get over onto the win more often than you lose side of things on Amazon, potentially. I don't know.
Well,
but
when you do the numbers right
that,
and do the product right, I would agree with that, mainly because of this point, not because that every product is a home run, because I call that my lottery.
That's why I say you got to do it right. It's not just everything
when
works.
the product goes to market, it's going to sell. Like, I know that. And
because
I don't know that
everything's above the waterline on Amazon. You can
everything's above the
qualify.
waterline. I know it's going to sell. Yeah. So my differentiation at the business or the product level is in 90 days. How fast is it going to sell? Will it meet the requirements of profitability? Yeah. And should I keep it for the next 3 quarters? It's not that it didn't sell. Did it meet the velocity and sales and profitability of expectations when we launched it? That's a big difference. I know the products we're going to launch are going to sell.
Because you confidence. And again, this is a mistake I see on the DTC side of things all the time. People copy, like, oh, somebody else is running this ad and selling this thing, I'm going to copy it. No. And it's not a good strategy.
You can't do Me Too product on Amazon either, by the way.
Okay.
Me Too products will kill you. It literally gets down to this simple little phrase, and I'm a hick from the country, so I break this down pretty simple for my brain. You can't ride 2 horses with one ass. So at the end of the day,
there you go. Using that word again, Neil.
Sorry, for kids at home, I meant a donkey. It's biblical. So you have to pick a channel that literally resonates with your brain and your objective, but at the same time,
thing that I think at the end of this,
you have to not ignore the other channel in its capacity, or on one side or the other, you're simply missing found money.
Yeah, well, especially when it comes to exit. So again, you know this and I know this, but if you are what's called channel locked, which means that you've got most or all of your sales coming from a single channel, your multiple is going to go down. When you've got channel diversity, your multiple goes up. So even with the same revenue number, if I'm doing $50 million in revenue and you're doing $50 million in revenue and I'm channel locked and you're not, when we go to exit, you're going to get multiple 8 figures more than I am probably.
100% agree. Now, if you're going to start that process, you can just, so people understand what the scope of that looks like from channel to channel. You can get 3 to 4x on either channel when you're channel locked. Amazon 2, just by itself without a front-facing customer channel, you can get 3 to 4x if your profitability is above 15% on the net margin when you go. But you can double that up to 2.5 times when you open another channel of product and distribution, even if it isn't making at or more than the other channel.
Right, it just has to be effective.
Of distribution. You're now at 4 to 8x up to 10x. And if you're really building a business and you are really strong on either channel, you now have to consider the next
That
channel
ultimately
opportunity
is the number that matters.
you're going to exit. And this is what we do, right? This is where you and I both agree at the end of the line here. Either channel has an exit point to it. Okay.
Yes.
Even if it's single channel. But to double the channel opportunity is to double the end result. And quite honestly, that's what businesses were meant to do, or more. Yeah, 2.5 times or more. And that is ultimately the opportunity as a business owner who may be listening to this. That is your opportunity. Don't miss that. Because as we are growing both physical asset channels, okay, we're growing inventory-based channels, and that's an asset. And it will continue to rise even if inflation rises. We can adjust supply chain and metrics.
Yeah,
to keep
at
that
some level,
moving.
even just looking at cash flow is a short-sighted thing. Even if you've done it right
100%.
and you're projecting out, 18, 24, 36 months,
right.
The cash flow is done right. The cash flow is it's not just the smaller percentage of things. It's the way smaller percentage of things if you do it right and you exit properly.
Revenue is vanity, cash flow is sanity, and profit is king.
Yeah.
And if you can follow that metric line, you'll have something worth something in the end. What drives me nuts, and I hope the people are listening to this today, is on either channel, whatever you do, if you are just pushing it down the next little road, if you're just keeping the pebbles going, if you're looking for a short-term cash and opportunity, you're actually missing the whole business opportunity of the asset that you should be creating instead of just shooting for these short-term gains. I mean, I think we can agree as business owners and business builders, that's the main component of whichever channel you're currently riding right now in terms of the opportunity. And there are pros and cons to each of those, of course, as we've, I think, had fun laying out today. I've had fun laying them out.
This has been fun.
I hope you guys.
We didn't even get to probably 2/3 of what I wanted to.
No, we're not done yet.
But conceptually, I think we got good stuff, and we probably should, just out of respect for everybody, just wrap this up. Respect their time, and actually, if you don't mind, Neil, I don't know how much more time you've got because we're already probably we've been doing about an hour 10. Maybe we go for a little bit longer, but and I have no idea whether there's interest in this or not. But as Neil and I talked. I don't remember when it was, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It was recently. And we started, as we were in this conversation where we were thinking, gosh, we should record this because this is good stuff. And these, by the way, this is how our conversations go. Neil's talking over me and I'm talking over Neil and I'm passionate about what I'm saying. He's passionate about what he's saying. And we're both right conceptually about it, right? It's not like I'm right and Neil's wrong as much as I'm right for me, Neil's right for him. And as what we started thinking about was, I get asked all the time things like, well, what product should I sell? And I tell them, you're asking the wrong question. It's not a good question to ask. Because on the DTC side, it's not a good question to ask. You've got to start, if it's direct to consumer, you've got to start on the consumer side. But as Neil talks, the very first thing you do is figure out what's the product, because you can do that. And then figure out what's the audience behind that. And I started to realize, man, I bet there's a lot of people, because I get asked questions all the time that I just think, I think, again, for me, that's not a good question. But then I realized that's probably a really good question for Neil. And Neil gets asked questions all the time that he's thinking, well, for me, that's not a good question, but maybe that's a good question for Matt. And so one of the things that we thought could be fun is if we just set up a group. Neil, you were the one that kind of had this idea. Tell me again real quick. I'm still not totally clear on how this works, but tell me real quick what you were saying to do in a couple of weeks with anybody who's interested.
I think it'd be fun if we got on and actually broke some of these topics individually, because you and I surfaced and we dove in a few rabbit holes, but we didn't do it in such a linear way where I think it'd be fun to maybe try to take.
There's no linearity to this at all. No.
Well, it was unscripted. That wasn't the point. The point was just to let it go through the flow, and that's, I think, what we did today. But I think it would be fun to set it up, and I think it might provide value for people. But you guys will have to tell me if you think this is right, to maybe have a 2 or 3 day time when we just get together and we'll jam on the one topic at one time through each segment of differentiation between DTC and FBA, from things like, what the heck do I sell? Like one of the first things that is addressable from my category of looking at this, and then maybe break each of those topics down so we can bring the whole thing of what we talked to from products to numbers to market and competition to even the geeking out. And even the business principles and what I call the platinum principle of organizing your whole business from the beginning with the end in mind. I think it'd be fun to sit down and go through each of those topics, even if it took us an hour to go through each one, and maybe do it over 2 to 3 days on a Zoom live and bring you guys in as maybe panelists, or people can be involved. We can do it like a virtual meetup, like we were going to go to Florida and stand in a room and chat and go through this in live or whatever. and do something like that. I don't know if
we can even make people wear masks if they're more comfortable. I know you're a big mask fan, Neil.
No mask on the Zoom. If you show up with a mask on the Zoom, I'm kicking you off.
I like it. So when Neil was talking about it, I liked it because I just get a lot of questions for people. And I do think there's value in, there are certain scenarios, by the way, where the play is, start on Amazon and then come over to DTC. There are other ones where I think it goes the other way, but I don't think that there's just this one size, hey, this is always the answer for everybody, every time, everywhere. So it was intriguing to me. If that's something that, if you're listening to this and that seems like that would be interesting,
I think it'd be fun to do because I've enjoyed this, but we didn't get into some of the topics I wanted to go deeper into just because I think time and energy we've covered across a number of things. The biggest one I would want to unpack right out of the gate is the question of what product, what idea, what concept, how do I approach the person? What should I be looking for? That'd be a fun one to jam on right out of the gate with folks because I know a lot of them think about that.
I agree. And I think then getting into that from a standpoint of here's how you do it from an Amazon standpoint, but here's how to make sure that if you're doing it that way, because it's way easier to do that on Amazon than DTC.
Well, let's say I can identify the product.
How do we also
identify the segment, and then you can add your DTC component that said, okay, here's why this might or might not be a good product. We can literally go into that level.
Exactly. So here's how you're going to set this up so that in a year or 18 months, then
people thought that would be
good. Let's make sure that even if you're not right now, you're not going to be trying both of them, and I recommend you don't. But let's make sure that it can move in that direction. Let's talk about the numbers that you look at, and maybe talk about the numbers that I look at, the leading metric. I think there's a lot that
pretty close to each other because I track about 40 different data points across the product that evaluates the product, and I'll give you guys some insight. And you might look at that and say, well, that's not really important to me, but here's the one I look at, and we can see the differences in that. It might be fun. I don't know if everybody thinks that'd be great. We can figure out a time and date in the future to do that, maybe relatively soon.
Okay, let's see if we got any questions here real quick. I don't think so. I think we just have feedback so far. How can we do our brand building as a wholesaler? So we are not selling our own brand product. I don't have a lot of experience.
No, I love that. It's a data mine. Yeah, I scream when I hear that because people don't understand the data they have at the wholesaling level right now that they can take into brand building and literally just crush it because they understand something they don't recognize right now.
This is something, by the way, I think Neil and I would both agree on too, for different reasons. But part of what I'm doing DTC is data capture, and part of what Neil's doing is data capture and mining that data and doing something with it. So I don't have a lot of experience in this. I would not be a good person to ask this.
But I would bring that up, and we can talk about that because a lot of the people that I speak to aren't already selling brands on Amazon. They are doing some other component of touching Amazon in some way and fell into some traps and some things and. Whatever they did, they understood the opportunity. They just didn't understand the things that they were missing or the things they did.
I see that too. People set up a Shopify store
and arbitrage and all this stuff. And you're like, okay, you know what? I spent so much time doing that and I worked myself into a job. How do I actually work myself out of a job into literally?
Right. And I worked myself into a job that I hate, that I'm my own boss and I got the worst boss in the world.
It frustrates the crap out of me for people because I've been there and I want to help them through that because I was the person who also got stuck in some of that in the past too. And then realize that if you're working with the system, there's a massive amount of opportunity that does not require more of my time. It just requires me getting in front of those people the right way so I can unlock the audience opportunity.
And look, you're hitting on something right now that I'm particularly passionate about right now, which is getting away from this hustle mentality of, well, yeah, anything's possible if I'm willing to work 16 hours a day. And people wear that like a badge of honor. And having been through the health problems I just went through, folks, it ain't the badge of honor you think it is.
No.
It's not the badge of honor that I thought that it was, by the way.
Yes.
And so now it's, how can I set this up? When I talk about having a CEO scale business, this is part of it, is how can I set this up to where I'm not having to just keep chasing and chasing and chasing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think there's value to being willing to do that stuff, but wearing that like a badge of honor, thinking that somehow is the requirement of this, that again, I'm particularly right now just against that because of what I've been through over the last 8 months. But also it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and I worked myself into a job in the past in my own company from the job that I originally left that I hated. So how dumb is that? Like that was literally, why did I do that to myself?
From the frying pan into the fire?
Literally, I created because in some ways I didn't understand how to pull myself out of the business and see the opportunities and literally shift my mindset into one that was of abundance and not scarcity. Because you think, oh, I'm in my own company, I'm an abundant thinker. And then you get into the details of it and it's like, no, you still got a scarcity mindset. You're just applying it in your company and telling everybody you're not.
Doing it differently. Hopefully, by the way, again, hopefully people can see, because there are going to be people in here I don't know. There's going to be people in here you don't know.
Right.
Clearly people that don't like me, maybe some people that don't like you.
Guaranteed.
But if nothing else, I feel like we're talking about this at a different level. Here's something else I think we can both agree on. This is typically coached poorly, taught poorly. I think taught narrowly, and it deserves a much broader conversation about how to really create.
Well, there's some deep topics we didn't get into, and I'd be fun to get into each of those a little deeper. Break them up and section them for people's brain, because this has been you're bringing stuff to the table we haven't talked about, which is a fire hose. That we've been working on here for just a little bit. But it would be important to, and quite frankly, guys, you should understand something about why we're talking here. In the past, we combined these two swim lanes that are our separate channels into a mega opportunity that used both channels to develop Amazon and then the DTC. And I think that's the thing you should remember here. That's how we got it started in our first conversations together, is how to unlock that opportunity and explode it in both channels, but yet staying in our own swim lanes to a degree that we're both dangerous about the other channel. Literally.
Agreed. People ask me stuff about Amazon still all the time, and it's like, that's a dangerous thing to do. I'll probably tell you stuff that's going to get you in trouble. Not because what I was doing was get me in trouble type of stuff, but because that's not how you do it.
Well, no, it's just changed. It's changed a lot. And if you're not in a daily evolution, it changes so fast, it's hard to keep up with.
Yes. So tactically, we've been talking mostly strategic up till now, but tactically, they're minefields. They're both minefields, especially if you take older stuff. Neil, you had, when we were talking about this originally, we started talking about some dates, and I was going to check my schedule. If we did something like the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, you mentioned 3 days. What, 2 hours a day? Like basically hour and a half, something like this.
Because each topic is going to probably go a little bit deep.
Okay, cool. So if y'all would like to be a part of that, free.
Oh yeah, no charge. No,
okay,
that's silly.
And doing something like this, we'll come up with an agenda. And if you're going to be in it, by the way, we'd love to hear your questions. So I like your idea, Neil, of we'll create a post or something, and people can respond there if you got specific things that we want to jump into. Obviously, we can't jump into everything in over that 3-day period, but I think if we can find what the big topics are, I like your idea, Neil, of there's a clear starting point. Let's start with that, and then kind of move from there.
Let's drive those topics down, and then we can put them back in the group as a little bit of an agenda.
Okay.
As to how we might structure it with that together. And guys, there might be opportunities for us to do things in the future together. Just be aware. If we do something like this, I'm going to make the caveat that this is not a sales pitch. This is not a buy from the stage nonsense crap. I just think that it's fun to do this with you, and it'd be great. Should we invite anybody to do anything with us, that's all it's going to be, is an invite.
We were talking yesterday, really right before this.
Other than that,
Neil's like, "Why do you do this?" It's like, I just get personal enjoyment out of doing this right now. Anyway, Devin's got this is good feedback, because I think this is one of the things that is a tricky thing. I feel like if you can have a winning product in Amazon world, you could scale that to the moon through FB. But that's just my thinking. Any thoughts on this? You're done right, Devin. You're correct. This is why I got off of Amazon. They scale in different directions. As Neil already mentioned, when you build this brand, you're typically scaling out on Amazon. Doesn't mean you can't scale up, but scaling out is the primary scale vector. Neil, would you say that that's reasonably accurate? Doesn't mean you can't sell a lot of something.
Yes and no, but keep going with your
okay. Right, because it's yes and no on both sides of this. But this is when you scale, when you get off of Amazon into DTC, you have more flexibility, which introduces some more scale points. Typically,
vertical
scaling,
or horizontal, right?
Correct.
Yep.
So it's not. This is not a hard and fast rule. But here's the big caveat to this, Devin, is Amazon is chock full of products that just won't work DTC.
That's
so
right.
it's a really hard blanket statement to make. Neil and I, as we talked about this the other day, there's a lot of overlap in this and what Neil's looking for a product, or things like he mentioned just a few minutes ago. He'll say, here's the margin that I'm looking for. Here are some of the qualities it's got to have, where I'm like, okay, cool. I look for the same thing, only this is my version of it, or my number's got to be this, where your number's got to be this. Very rarely do we run into things to support what you just said, Devin. Very rarely do we run into things where it's like, oh, that's straight up like you're specifically looking for that, and I'm anti-looking for that. There's not much of that, but you can make a run on Amazon with a $40 product. That's going to be hard to do, especially post iOS 14.5. There's other things. It's not that you can't do it, but there are things I would look for that are an ideal product on DTC that I know can scale, and there's a tremendous amount of overlap with good products on Amazon as well. And when you've got that, and then you can use Amazon. Neil, you mentioned Amazon earlier, that you treat Amazon as an incubator. Then I think it makes a ton of sense to treat Amazon as an incubator, because you've already done the pre-qualifications for what it's going to take to move it off to DTC. But the chances of just randomly picking a product on Amazon and it works. So one, your odds are already against you if you randomly picked it. But then being able to take that and transition it off of Amazon, I've just experienced, and certainly limited experience, but I've not experienced very many people that just naturally and organically can take that and make that happen. It is harder than it would appear, unless you've put some forethought into it, unless you've done some legwork up front to make it so. And then, totally true, Devin. Totally true.
So the caveat to that winning product, when I hear winning product on Amazon, I have to ask: is it winning on the number of units sold, or the number of the amount of profit in that product? See, a winning product for me isn't the amount of units we move; it's the profitability in that product, and then the number of units we can move against our competition and data. That's second. So I don't know what you define as a winning product, or maybe you want to drop your comments in there real quick and we'll have an understanding. Again, I don't need to know the product.
At this point, I would say let's hit that hard. You mentioned product selection is the first thing you'd like to go over. I would say let's hit that hard, because let's dig into I think we can go deep on this, Neil.
This is a horizontal person in me. Is like, if you have a winning product on Amazon, I can show you how to take and make that into 20 or 50 other products in the next 6 months, and go way deep into what you are. When
I mentioned, by the way, in our essential oil, this is one of the things that Neil had us do, where we ended up with 1,200 SKUs, and and a pretty good scaled store on Amazon, and that was a lot of what that was. Let me follow this up with a Jeff Bezos quote, since we're talking about Amazon. So I made a post the other day where I closed it, said, "Hey, here's the secret to e-commerce success. And when you figure this out, then everything else tends to fall in place, and that's that tails drive everything." So here's a quote from Jeff Bezos that I think explains this well. "Outsized returns often come from betting against conventional wisdom, and conventional wisdom is usually right. Given a 10% chance, which means, by the way, you're going to fail a lot doing this. Given a 10% chance of a 100 times payoff, you should take that bet every time, but you're still going to be wrong 9 times out of 10. We all know that if you swing for the fences, you're going to strike out a lot, but you're also going to hit some home runs. And here's where it gets critical. The difference between baseball and business, however, is that baseball has a truncated outcome distribution. When you swing, no matter how well you connect with the ball, the most runs you can get is 4. In business, every once in a while, when you step up to the plate, you can score 1,000 runs. This long-tailed distribution of returns is why it's important to be bold. Big winners pay for so many experiments." So when I talk about that, the secret is that tails drive everything. Yes, you can get lucky. You can win the lottery. Somebody wins the lottery every week, right? But it's a terrible investment to invest in lottery tickets.
Yes,
so most people, not most people, I don't think it's most people, a lot of people that are starting e-commerce companies, whether they're on Amazon or whether they're DTC, they're doing it with this lottery mentality. I'm going to have 1 product, 2 products. I'm going to test 1 audience, maybe 10 audiences, thinking they're doing a lot. But bottom line is, they are playing the lottery with their business. And maybe they're successful and maybe they're not. For every 1 that's successful, you got 20 of them that aren't. The key here is to understand, and some people, Nick, for example, he went the opposite long tail route, which is you're going to sell fewer of a lot of products. You're going to take the long tail, meaning they're not as popular. I'm going to go the Jeff Bezos route on here, which is the other side of the tail, which is that every once in a while you're going to stumble across this narrow little thing. You're going to stumble across this thing that you do that requires covering ground. It requires going to bat 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. but you're going to find this thing that gives you these crazy returns, which, by the way, is also how you end up where people say you only did easy things. You only did these businesses and you took the low-hanging fruit. It's like, well, no kidding, I took the low-hanging fruit. You don't get any bonus points for saying I'm going to do this the hard way. I'm going to swim upstream doing this. But how I found the low-hanging fruit was slogging through a whole bunch of fruit that was not low-hanging and climbing out on branches and going out on limbs and experimenting and trying to find that tail. And once you discover that secret, once you discover that, it's as true a thing as I can say in this business that is fraught with risk and fraught with loss and failure and all of these other things. But as true a thing as I can say is if you cover enough ground, if you run enough experiments, if you try enough, you will find your thing that other people are going to say, well, sure, that was easy. Of course, in hindsight, you got lucky. Well, folks, guess what? I got lucky 6 different times. I got lucky selling a company to Fortune 500. And I'm the first one, by the way, to admit I got lucky on those things. And I covered a tremendous amount of ground. I failed a lot. I made some dumbass mistakes as I
20
went
years
through
to
this.
an overnight success.
20 years to an overnight success. Yep.
And all the failures in between, we write off as the past.
And they don't get publicized. So again, these are below the waterline.
Big failures when you move hard and fast.
Yes. So anyway,
very painful.
that's what that tails drives everything. When you can embrace that mentality that you're looking for that tail, and it's not you're embracing failure for the sake of failure, but it's, again, Bezos explained it way better than I could, but it's that same thing. Amazon built a $1 trillion business off of tails. And in hindsight, it looks obvious. One-click ordering looks stupid obvious in hindsight. Yep. But they tried a lot of stuff to get there.
Books to physical for other physical products and off of books. Well, that's evolutionary. That's normal. That's
the concept of even selling. Yes, all of these things were these. I don't want to say chance occurrences because that's not the right way of approaching it. But the amount of failure that went into the obvious is staggering. By the way, the corollary to that should be super exciting for people is the amount of obvious that goes into success is also staggering. The amount of, you don't have to, is it great to come up with something that's sexy and new and nobody else has done yet?
Sure.
Yes, but how'd that work out for MySpace? You know, how
success is boring at the end of the day because it's repetitive. And when we get the products in the market and we understand the demographic and we understand now 80% of what's working, it's just repeating that process. And it can get kind of boring for some people. But when you repeat that process, you're swinging the bat a lot more times. And that's why we always test to fail, even on Amazon. And that's one of the biggest differentiators I see in the market when people teach and coach about how to get started in e-commerce, is they're not leading people into that understanding right out of the very beginning, that you will test to fail first. You will take the data and learn from it. And the faster you do that, the faster you will find a winner to scale. And that's why people who literally on Amazon scream and yell at the world about how it sucks and takes all the profit and it doesn't work is because they launch one product in the system, maybe 2, and it doesn't work.
And probably don't do that particularly well.
Too leveraged into it. And then it doesn't produce the results they need or want or expect. And they cause it to fail. What if you started totally different from the beginning? What if you started at a totally different level?
And I'm actually going to do, I say I'm going to do someday. Maybe today, maybe in 6 months. I do have a follow-up video. The reason I had that quote handy was because I'm actually working on a video just to kind of explain that process and what that velocity is a great word that you use, Neil. I don't use it a lot in my business, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, that's what it is. Is how do you develop, one, an instinct and a habit of velocity, but 2, how do you then take that velocity and up even as you're failing 90% of the time, how do you turn that into something not only meaningful, but you're looking for that thing. I'll go over the math at some point, but the math on it is staggering when you see how those winners swamp the losers, even though you're failing the vast, huge majority of the time. Because again, nobody sees the 500 funnels that I built that didn't work. They only see the dozen that did work.
But if we're treating it as a business strategy of investment, you realize that most business investments do not hit the lottery. You will do 9, 10 investments, and the one investment that actually hits, whether it's real estate, property, whatever, will make up more than enough of anything that was provided in the original 9. It will surpass it. Okay, it's just a right way to think about how to invest in the business.
And let's close on this, Neil, because we're 90 minutes in at this point, and we can call it. So I think that he commented on your post initially back when you posted your thing that got ghosted in the minefield of Facebook. But I just like this. Please also correct my understanding that Amazon equals already funnel built, and we have to use it effectively. I like that analogy. Yeah, they've done a lot of the hard work and experimentation for you. And if you're not drawn to doing that yourself, I'm drawn to doing that myself. If you're not, Amazon is doing that. Amazon, they're not doing it in a funnel format, but they're doing all that experimentation for you, and you do get. It's a more plug and play system for sure. DTC, build it your own and use it per the funnel system built. I think that's again, 100% accurate, no, but is that on point? Yes, that's on point. I like that part that in DTC, I can invent my own stuff because when I do, that's one of the things, that's one of the experiment points that I'm going to leverage to try and get outsized results and to beat my competition. If that's not something that you're going, that's not what Neil's going to leverage. So he's going to look at it differently than I do.
But won't it blow your mind to find out that I do some social media and stuff to help influence Amazon? Oh no, he didn't just say
well,
that.
if it's any consolation to you, I buy a ton of stuff on Amazon, so I'm very familiar with the platform from the consumer standpoint.
Liar if you don't. Yeah, that's pretty good feedback.
Awesome, Neil. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day today, and
thank you. It's been fun.
There's been a lot of fun. I like doing this. I might have to do this more often with other stuff.
Right on.
So appreciate your time, Neil.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take care.
If you like this episode, please share it with people you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode of High Voltage Business Builders.